Callie and welcome to Kapowski Reads, and this is my April wrap up. In April I got through 20 books, which frankly is ridiculous. For me, I read more when I'm kind of stressed or anxious, so I think that probably shows how my April has been. It's been really busy at work, so I have read an absolute ton. If you've read any of the books that I have, I would love if you let me know how you got on with them, and I would also like to know your favourite book of the month. If you want to share that, please pop it in the comments. I love adding books to my TBR list. It is never ending and only ever gets longer. But I love hearing what people have enjoyed. I will be sharing my favourite book of April nearer the end of this video, just before my reading goals for next month, May. I can't believe it's May already, or gonna be May. So since I've got quite a lot of books to go through, I'm going to start with the 8 books that I've already featured in previous videos in April. I will pop links in the description for those videos for anyone who wants to hear a bit more about these books. So let's just start, I suppose. First up, I've got Hyde by Craig Russell. This was chilling, creepy. I loved it. I gave it 4 stars. Kind of wanted to give it 4.5, but Goodreads does not give me half stars. I want a half star. Deep Wheel Orcadia by Harry, Josephine, Giles. Turns out I enjoy poetry. I thought the writing was absolutely beautiful and I really enjoyed the story. I gave 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. A History Maker by Alasdair Gray. This was a really enjoyable, unusual read. I felt it started really strong. It kind of tapered off a little bit for me at the end. I gave it 3 stars. Young Mungo by Douglas Stuart. It was heartbreaking yet beautiful and left me feeling a little hopeful. I gave it 5 stars. I loved this book. Widowland by C.J. Carey. I thought the premise of this book was just so promising. I thought it was going to be really, really interesting, but I was left a little bit underwhelmed. I gave it 2 stars. The Moon, the Stars and Madame Burova by Ruth Hogan. It was a nice, light, enjoyable read. Unfortunately, there were some bad times for a dog, which resulted in me marking it down to a 2. 6 Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. I thought this book was beautiful and a gloriously whimsical book of a reimagined fairy tale. I loved this book. I gave it 5 stars. I am very excited to read the sequel, which I have pre-ordered. So I want more of this. The Island by C.L. Taylor. Unfortunately, this book was just not for me at all. I gave it 1 star. Sorry. Those are the books that I have already mentioned before. So now here are books that I've not raved about yet. I had a lot of arcs to get through in May. It's not May, in April. Basically, what I do on NetGalley is I request books that I really, really want to read, but I don't think I have any chance of getting because I'm just a teeny tiny account. I don't expect that I'll get the big book that I really, really want. And it turned out that every book that I had requested to read got approved. And I ended up being somewhat overwhelmed by the amount of advanced copies that I had access to. So I spent a decent part of this month focusing on reading the advanced copies that I had, because otherwise what's the point if I'm not going to read them before they come out? So I got through 6 arcs this month, which is absolutely loads for me. I read The Madwoman by Louisa Treger, which was a fictional tale about Nellie Bly, who was a journalist who had tricked her way into an asylum because she wanted to write a true tell-all story about what was really going on. And I had heard a little bit about Nellie Bly before, when I had read a book that was about Typhoid Mary, who went to the same asylum. I think. I could be wrong because both of these books were fictional, so my facts are not reliable. I thought the book was okay. It took about 50% of the book to really get going. It was more about Nellie's childhood than I had expected. I also felt that the end was just so quick. It was over so quickly. It took a really long time to build to the crescendo of the book, and then was just over in a couple of pages. So I gave this book 2 stars. I also read Empress Crowned in Red by Ciannon Smart. This was the sequel to Witches Steeped in Gold, which I did enjoy. So I was very excited to see where the series went on. This book picked up straight where the first book had left me, which is what I like in a sequel. I don't like things to have happened in between that I don't know about. And the exciting parts of this book were really, really exciting, but there were quite a few parts that were a little bit slower, and that sort of put me off my momentum. I did enjoy this book though. I really enjoyed the sort of battle scenes in this book. They were pretty, for lack of a better word, they were pretty epic, and I really enjoyed it. I gave this book 3 stars, but like a high 3. Just because of the times during this book where it was quite long, that I felt it dragged a little bit, that I couldn't quite justify to myself giving it 4 stars, but like 3.5. I really want half points. I then read a collection of kind of creepy short stories called Life Ceremony by Sayaka Murata, and I had not read anything by this author before, but I had been told from reliable sources that I would enjoy this author because they were a little bit unusual with their subject matter, and that is something that I do enjoy. I really enjoyed these short stories, and I'm not usually one for a short story collection, but they were all quite kind of creepy, but not in a scary way, and I thought that they covered some topics that were a little bit perhaps taboo, maybe. At least they were quite disturbing, such as cannibalism, but I really enjoyed this collection, and I do have a friend who's going to loan me another book by this author. I gave it 4 stars and look forward to reading more of their books. I also read The Confessions of an Alleged Good Girl by Joa Godfrey, and this was a young adult book that was about a young woman who had broken up with her boyfriend, and she was experiencing some health issues relating to her love life. And I thought that the subject of this book was really important because there are parts of women's health that aren't really talked about as much as they perhaps should be. So I thought that this book was really important because somebody could read this and see some similarities from their own life and realise that they're not alone, and you know, they're not broken. I just thought that the story behind, the sort of moral behind this book was really important, and I loved the friendship in this. They were just a bunch of people that you would never put together, but their friendship really worked, and they were sort of 16, 17 and just felt realistic. Like I could have been friends with these people. I really enjoyed it, and I really liked the strong female characters throughout this book. 4 stars for this. And it's the sort of book that I would like to get a physical copy of so that I can sort of put it on my stepkids' bookshelf, because I think it's a book that's going to be really important to them when they're a little bit older. Then got to read a book about a spooky wood, which if you know me in real life, you will know that I love stories about spooky woods, haunted woods. I grew up in the countryside, so something about woodland just makes me feel kind of at peace, even if it is a creepy wood. I love a creepy wood. I read The Dark Between the Trees by Fiona Barnett, and this all about creepy woods, but it was a sort of dual timeline book, which was about the disappearance of an army in the 17th century. They disappeared in the woods, and modern day academics who were looking into this disappearance, and I thought that it was just utterly just creepy, so creepy, and this book really allowed my imagination to just go wild, full of so many theories of, you know, is there something in the woods? Is it just in my head that I'm imagining these woods as creepy and haunted? And I just devoured this book. I read it in a weekend. I did not want to put it down. I did have to put it down at points because I had stuff to do, but I didn't want to do those things. I wanted to just read this book and finish it, and I gave it 5 stars. I highly recommend it. I also really enjoyed the parallels between the 17th century and modern day. Again, I could be reading too much into this book, but I felt there were parallels. I then read This Wicked Fate by Kaylin Bayron, which I was so excited to read this book. I pre-ordered this book back in, I don't know, last year. It's one of the books that I had on my most anticipated reads. This is the sequel to This Poison Heart, which if you've been here for a while, you may know that that was one of my favourite books of 2021. I loved it. I gave people copies for Christmas because I loved it and I want to talk to people about how much I love this book. So yeah, my excitement going into this, pretty high. And I absolutely loved it. I could not fault this book. I enjoyed absolutely everything about it. It did that thing I enjoy with sequels where it just picks me up right where the last book left me. And then it's all about a quest, and I don't want to go into details about the quest, about what the quest is for, because that would ruin This Poison Heart, and I refuse to ruin This Poison Heart for anybody because it's a beautiful book. I really enjoyed the sequel. It was full of found family, which is one of my favourite tropes, and Greek mythology, strong female characters, a quest. I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I really enjoyed the book, and it's out in June and I'm going to read it again in June. For my book club this month, I actually read my book club book kind of earlier than I normally would. Usually I'm kind of last minute because I read quite a lot of books and I want to have it fresh in my mind for the discussion, but I read this a little bit earlier. I had to take notes just in case. And it was Open Water by Caleb Azuma Zelson. And this was a love story between two people who are sort of destined to be together but also kind of doomed to drift apart due to fear, violence, you know, all of the horrible things. I really enjoyed the format of this book. It was poetic, it was lyrical, it's one of the most beautifully written books that I have read, and I've been very lucky to have read quite a lot of beautifully written books. This joins the pile of those. I absolutely loved the way that the book was delivered to me. I didn't enjoy the story quite as much though. I gave it 3 stars though. I still think if you want a beautifully written book, definitely go for this. I can see why it won, I'm not 100% sure what prize. I want to say the Costa prize. Is there a Costa prize? Yeah. It won an award and I feel that it's completely well deserved because it is a beautifully written book. My Read Christie book for April was Why Didn't They Ask Evans by Agatha Christie. It's all about finding out what really happened to a person who fell off of a cliff. I absolutely loved the investigation between Bobby and Frankie. I thought that their dynamic was just so enjoyable. I really like this book. Despite having read this before and I knew who did it and I knew why they did it, when I read it again, I could not see any of that coming. So I was looking for the hints and I didn't see them. That's what I love about Agatha Christie. I never know what's happening. Even when I do actually know what's going to happen, I never see it coming. And I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. It was really fun. It felt really fast paced, which is something that I enjoy from a murder mystery. I don't want to have time to sit and take my notes. I want to just go from one thing to the next. I really enjoyed it. I also, feeling very proud of myself, made some progress in my series. I have been trying to finish off some series because I keep starting new series and then I never finish the old ones. So this month I finished 2 series and made progress in another, which I'm now ending. I read The Vexed Generation by Scott Mayer, which was the 6th book in the Magic 2.0 series. And I didn't overly enjoy this book. I have been enjoying the series less and less as I have gone on with it, but I wanted to finish it. I wanted to read the last one. And I kind of wish I hadn't because it felt quite disjointed from the previous books. So it was fine. It was an okay book. It wasn't bad. It just, I felt like there were new things being brought in that hadn't featured in the last 5 books, so we were sort of changing lore at the end. It just didn't really work for me. I gave it 2 stars, but I still feel very fondly towards the first book, maybe first 2 books in the series. I also finished the Dr. Greta Helsing series, and I read Grave Importance by Vivian Shaw. This was all about Greta Helsing, who is a doctor to vampires, mummies, you know, all the fun things. And this book was set in Marseille in a spa for mummies, and I was so excited about that. And I really enjoyed the bits at the spa. And I enjoyed the bits with the mummy, I enjoyed the bits in New York, I thought they were really exciting. And then the book did something weird. It took a huge turn, brought in all of these things that had never featured before that I wasn't there for. It felt like the second half, or perhaps last third, of this book was a completely different series, and I just felt a little disoriented reading this book because it took such a huge turn out of what felt like nowhere. I ended up giving this book 2 stars. I also read book 6 of the Symphony of Ages series, which is The Assassin King by Elizabeth Haydn. I loved this series when I started it. I have enjoyed the books less and less as I've gone on, with the last book, the 5th book, getting only 2 stars, and I gave this book 1 star. I think there are 3 more books in this series, and they don't seem to have been published in the UK, so for me to get those final 3 books, it's going to cost me about £100, and based on my enjoyment of the previous few books that I've read in this series, I just think that that's quite an expensive risk for me to take. So I'm just gonna end the series now at book 6. I know what happens. I looked up spoilers on Goodreads, which I don't like doing, but if it's a series I don't want to continue with and I want to know what happens, I do. And having found those spoilers, I am raging. And I think it probably is for the best that Symphony of Ages and we maybe break up. And I read some non-fiction, just 1, but I read A is for Arsenic, The Poisons of Agatha Christie by Catherine Harkup, which was such a fascinating book. I don't know a lot about poisons. I don't know why I would know a lot about poisons, but it was really interesting finding out more about the poisons that I have read about in my Agatha Christie's. And I really enjoyed just learning just how much research Agatha Christie had made in writing her books. And I really enjoyed this. It basically gave me details about the poisons, and then about real life cases involving those poisons, and then about Agatha Christie books involving said poisons. I thought it was a fascinating read, and I really enjoyed it. And maybe I want to read more about poison. So my book recommendation of the month that nobody asked for April has to be This Wicked Fate by Kaylin Bayron. I honestly felt that this book was just utter perfection for me. Loved it. I absolutely loved it. I could not find any fault with it at all. Not that I was looking, but I adored this book. So for me, I have some very specific goals, and only a few books that I know for certain that I want to read. I've got 2 books that are part of a series, and I have pre-ordered books 3 in each of those series, but I haven't read books 2. So I plan to rectify that, and I'm going to read The Last Graduate by Naomi Novik, and I'm going to read The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman, because I do not want to receive books 3 having not read books 2. That kind of feels like a wasted pre-order, because I can't go in and start reading 3 if I've not read 2. That makes no sense. I also plan to get back to reading classics. I didn't read a classic this month. I plan to read A Study in Scarlet and The Sign of the Four by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, which is Sherlock Holmes. Yeah, so I really just plan to get back into reading some classics. Not loads, but you know, at least 1 a month. It might be something that I do a vlog about. I don't know. If that's something you'd be interested in, let me know. And that's it, because again, I'm at that stage where I'm just going to ramble, and I've got pins and needles in my feet, so I kind of want to stand up. Thank you for watching if you've made it this far to the rambly part of my video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!